The savannah air was warm and thick with magnolia blooms. The kind of southern afternoon that feels like it belongs in a movie. I stood in front of the mirror inside the bridal suite at the Riverstone Hotel, smoothing the sides of my navy dress. Samantha, my baby sister, had picked it out for me herself, saying, "It brings out your eyes, Lore." I smiled when I remembered that. Everything about today was meant to be perfect. Samantha had finally found someone who got her, as she always said. Alex was charming, ambitious, ran some kind of creative agency in Atlanta. They looked good together, honestly. And even though we'd had our ups and downs as sisters, today, I just wanted to celebrate her. Nothing more, nothing less. "You ready, babe?" Ethan's voice came from the other side of the door. My husband of 10 years, still with that calm, steady tone that had gotten me through so many storms. "Almost," I called back, giving my reflection one final glance. My makeup held. The curls had stayed despite the humidity, and the heels, well, they weren't comfortable, but they were doing their job. Ethan stepped in, dressed in a dark blue suit that hugged his shoulders perfectly. He kissed my cheek and said, "You look like the classiest woman in the room. Sam's lucky to have you as her maid of honor." I rolled my eyes. "Please, it's her day. I'm just trying not to trip down the aisle." We left the suite and made our way through the quiet corridor toward the ceremony space. The hotel had converted the old garden hall into a stunning chapel. White roses everywhere, candlelit aisle, string quartet playing some mellow instrumental that I couldn't place but instantly loved. My mom was already seated in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like any proud mother would. The whole thing felt surreal, elegant, grand. The kind of wedding you see on Instagram and think, wow, they really went all out. I sat down beside Ethan, took his hand, and let out a slow breath. "She's really doing it," I whispered. He nodded. "She looks happy." I believe that too. Despite our past, despite the occasional distance between us, today wasn't about grudges. It was about Samantha stepping into a new chapter of her life, and me being there to support her. The music shifted. Bridesmaids walked in one by one, graceful, poised. Then the room fell into a hush as the doors opened again, and Samantha stepped in. I wasn't ready for how emotional I'd feel. Her dress shimmered under the golden lights. She walked in on Mom's arm, veil cascading behind her, a soft, confident smile on her face. And when she looked at me, when our eyes met, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was that tiny flicker of hope that said, maybe things between us really are getting better. I squeezed Ethan's hand, and he squeezed back, like he knew I was holding back tears. The ceremony went by like a dream. Vows were exchanged, rings were slipped onto fingers, and that classic line, "You may now kiss the bride," was followed by thunderous applause. The room erupted in joy. I clapped with all my heart, truly happy for her. For once, it felt like everything was right in our little broken family. But that feeling, warm, peaceful, content, it didn't last long. In fact, if I had known what was waiting just a few courses into dinner, I wouldn't have touched a single bite. Back when we were kids, Samantha was the loud one, the kind of girl who made friends at the grocery store, won the school spirit award 3 years in a row, and could charm her way out of any punishment just by flashing a smile. Me, I was the quiet older sister, the bookworm, the planner, the one who always had her nose in a notebook while Sam danced barefoot on the lawn. We weren't exactly close. Not back then. We shared a bathroom and a last name, but that was about it. She was our dad's favorite, and I think we all knew it. He used to say, "Sam's got that spark, Lore. Don't dim it with all your rules." I never tried to, but somehow, I always felt like I was in her shadow. Things changed when Dad got sick. It started slow, fatigue, missed appointments, a fall in the kitchen. Then the diagnosis came, ALS, the kind of thing you only hear about on medical shows, suddenly in our living room. Samantha had just moved to Atlanta for a new job at some podcast studio. I remember the day I called to tell her. She cried, said all the right things, promised to visit soon. But the truth is, she didn't. Not once in the first year. Said she couldn't get time off. Said travel was too expensive. Said dad made her uncomfortable when he couldn't speak anymore. So I stepped in. I rearranged my work schedule, moved back into the house for a while. Took dad to appointments, cleaned the feeding tubes, talked to doctors, held his hand during the worst nights. I watched the man who raised us disappear piece by piece, and Samantha watched it happen through phone calls. Maybe once every couple of weeks, she'd FaceTime. 5 minutes, then gone again. Still, I didn't blame her. Not really. I thought, maybe she just couldn't handle it. Not everyone's built for that kind of pain. And when dad passed, peacefully, quietly, on a rainy Thursday morning, I didn't think about who had been there and who hadn't. I just thought, he's gone. And we only have each other now. After the funeral, Sam stayed with me for a few days. We cried together, went through dad's things, cooked dinner like we used to. I started to believe we were turning a corner, that maybe grief had softened us both. For the first time in years, she let me in, told me about her new boyfriend, Alex, told me she was finally thinking about settling down. I even helped her pick out a venue when they got engaged, and when she asked me to be her maid of honor, I said yes, without a second thought, because I believed we were good now. That whatever weird sibling rivalry we had in the past, it was over, buried, like the childhood arguments and the petty comparisons. I didn't need to win. I just wanted her to be happy. Then the will came. It was a simple reading. Just me, Samantha, the attorney, and a manila envelope. I remember the way she sat, legs crossed, arms tight, jaw clenched. Dad had left me 70% of everything. The house, the savings, the old land plot in Beaufort that had been in our family for generations. Samantha got the rest, 30%. I didn't ask for any of it. I didn't expect it, but I wasn't shocked either. Dad and I had shared the final chapter of his life. He trusted me with it. Still, when I looked over at Sam, her face was unreadable. She didn't say anything that day, not one word, just nodded, signed the papers, and left before the meeting even ended. Later that night, I texted her, asked if she wanted to grab dinner, talk things through. She said, another time. And that was that. Weeks passed, then months. We only talked about wedding logistics, nothing personal, just colors, timelines, seating charts. I told myself it was just the stress, that once the wedding was done, we'd get back to the sisterhood we almost had again. But now, sitting in that reception, with champagne in my hand and Ethan's warning ringing in my ears, I started to wonder if I'd missed something big. Because sometimes, when people drift away from you, they're not walking, they're running, and they're running for a reason. The cocktail hour was as polished as you'd expect. Waiters in white gloves, soft jazz floating through the courtyard, champagne that tasted expensive even though I couldn't tell you the brand. Samantha and Alex were out in the garden taking photos, laughing like two people who didn't have a care in the world. And for a moment, I believed it. I stood by the window with Ethan, sipping slowly, letting the golden light pour over everything. They look good together, I said without turning. Ethan nodded, but I noticed the way his brow furrowed. What's that look? I asked. He shook his head, gave me a half smile. Just tired. It's been a long day, which wasn't untrue, but something about the way he said it stuck in my gut like a tack. The reception hall opened with a grand flourish. Candles lit every table, roses in deep reds, and creams spilled out of vintage brass vases, and the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender. Honestly, it was stunning. We found our spots at the family table, Mom to my right, Ethan to my left, and Alex's parents across from us, already making small talk about Napa wine tours and retirement in Scottsdale. Everything felt easy, comfortable, like maybe we really had turned a corner. I glanced over at Samantha's seat, still empty. She and Alex were probably getting last-minute touch-ups or taking some final romantic shots before their big entrance. Then came the music, the kind that tells you something important is about to happen. Everyone stood. The double doors opened, and there they were. Samantha had changed into a sleeker gown for the reception. Still white, but lighter, with a thigh slit and no train. Her hair was down now, curled perfectly, and her eyes sparkled under the lights. Alex looked smitten. They walked in hand, the picture of marital bliss, and the crowd ate it up. Cheers, applause. Some people even wiped away tears. I clapped too, I really did. But when I glanced at Ethan, he wasn't clapping. He was watching something, or someone, behind them. The speeches came next. Alex went first, talking about how Samantha changed his life, brought out his best self, helped him believe in love again. The usual. Then Sam took the mic and thanked everyone for coming. Thanked Mom for raising her, and thanked me. My big sister, my rock, my forever protector, she said. I smiled. It was a sweet moment, but again, Ethan didn't smile. He leaned closer and whispered, "Did you see that?" I blinked. See what? He nodded subtly toward the back of the room. The kitchen door. Samantha was just talking to the chef before they walked in. I shrugged. She probably wanted to make sure the food's perfect. You know how she is? He nodded again, but slower this time. Yeah, maybe. Dinner service began a few minutes later. Waiters moved with that mechanical grace, placing down the appetizer like a choreographed ballet. I got smoked trout on a bed of greens. It looked incredible. I was about to pick up my fork when I noticed Ethan wasn't touching his. In fact, he wasn't even looking at the food. He was watching the kitchen again. Ethan, I said softly. What is it? He didn't answer. Just scanned the room. I followed his gaze and saw a waiter bringing out the main course. White fish with lemon butter sauce. Another came through the side door with more trays. It looked delicious, but Ethan's face changed, like something clicked. And when the waiter approached our table, I saw his hand tense on the tablecloth. He leaned in close to my ear, and what he said next? It wasn't casual, it wasn't a suggestion. It was the kind of voice he used at the station when someone's life was on the line. We're leaving. Right now. I froze. What? But his hand was already on mine. Steady, urgent, unshakable. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about overcooked fish. Something was very, very wrong. I didn't move at first. I mean, who would? 1 second, I was about to dig into what looked like the best fish I'd ever seen plated. And the next, my husband was gripping my hand, like we were in a burning building. Ethan, what are you talking about? I whispered, heart suddenly pounding. We're leaving. I'll explain in the car, he said, eyes locked on mine with this intense calm I'd only seen when he was in uniform. My mouth opened to argue. Something. Anything. But I couldn't get a word out. His tone didn't leave space for questions. Not right now. He stood up slowly, deliberately, like someone defusing a bomb. Still holding my hand, he nodded politely to the table like we were just stepping out for air. Mom was deep in conversation with Alex's dad and didn't notice a thing. Samantha and Alex were halfway across the room, laughing at something a bridesmaid had said. No one looked our way. No one stopped us. We walked out of the ballroom like everything was fine. But nothing felt fine. As soon as the doors closed behind us, I felt the shift. The air was cooler in the hallway, but it wasn't just that. Ethan's steps got faster, his grip tighter. We crossed through the lobby, past the check-in desk, toward the elevator. Ethan, what's going on? I tried again. He didn't answer, not because he was ignoring me, but because whatever he'd seen, whatever he was processing, had him in full firefighter mode. I'd seen that look before, back when a gas leak forced us out of our building at 3 a.m. It wasn't panic, it was purpose. The elevator ride felt endless. When we reached the parking garage, he went straight to the car without saying a word, unlocking it with a sharp click and opening the door for me fast. Not the usual gentlemanly way, but like he just needed me inside. Once we were both in, he started the engine, let out a long breath, then turned to face me. Did you really not notice? He said, voice low but cracking a little. My stomach turned. Notice what, Ethan? You're scaring me. He didn't answer right away. He pulled out of the garage, hands tight on the wheel. I stared at his profile, at the sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes kept flicking to the mirrors. Every nerve in my body felt on edge. Something was coming. Something I wasn't ready for. After maybe 3 minutes of silence, he pulled onto a side street and parked. No cars, no noise. Just the hum of the engine and my pulse in my ears. He turned off the ignition, but left the keys in, took a long breath, then looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "Lauren, you remember your peanut allergy, right?" I blinked, confused. "Yeah, of course I do. Why?" He looked down at his hands, then back at me. "You told the hotel, right? About the allergy?" I nodded. "Yes. I emailed the coordinator twice. And Samantha said she'd remind them too. Why are you asking me this?" He hesitated, just for a beat, but when he spoke again, his voice was calm and cold, like he'd rehearsed it in his head the whole way down here. "Before dinner, I saw Samantha talking to the head chef near the back entrance of the kitchen. At first, I thought she was just checking on timing or something, but then I saw her point to a list. Your seat number was highlighted. She said, something. And then I saw the chef pull out a bottle." I didn't breathe. "A bottle?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Lauren, it was peanut oil. I know what it looks like. I've seen enough med calls to recognize that label from across the room." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the laugh, the reassurance that I was just being paranoid. But none of that came. Just silence. Heavy. Cold. Real. And in that silence, I realized he wasn't asking me to believe him. He was telling me I was lucky to be alive. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My hands were shaking, and I didn't even realize until Ethan reached over and gently took one of them. His voice softened, but the weight of his words didn't. "Lauren, I watched the whole thing. Samantha wasn't just checking the food. She pointed directly at your seat. She nodded when the chef pulled out that bottle. It was intentional. I know what I saw." My head started spinning. "No," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "That doesn't make sense. Why would she wouldn't?" But I couldn't finish the sentence. I couldn't even think straight. Samantha was my sister. She was my only sibling. We had history. We had memories. She wouldn't try to hurt me. That's not something sisters do, right? Ethan stayed calm. He wasn't pushing, just waiting, letting it land. And somewhere in the swirl of disbelief and denial, a memory flashed. Just a few months ago, the day the attorney read Dad's will, Samantha didn't argue, didn't cry. She just left. No goodbye, no follow-up, just silence. That had bothered me, but I'd brushed it off. Told myself she needed space. Now, in this moment, that silence felt like a red flag I had completely missed. "You remember what the will said?" Ethan asked gently. I nodded. 70% to me, 30 to her. But if something happened to me, my voice trailed off. Ethan finished it for me. "Then she gets everything." The words hit like a punch, a slow, dull thud that echoed through my chest. "You think she would go that far? Just for money?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was already sitting between us in the car, breathing heavier than either of us. Then he said something that froze my blood. "Last week, I overheard part of a conversation between her and Alex when I stopped by to drop off a box of decorations. She thought I was in the kitchen. She said something like, 'Once everything settles down, we'll have the capital to start the second studio.' Capital, Lauren, not savings. Capital. She was talking about your money." I blinked hard. "She said that?" He nodded. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured maybe it was wedding stress talking. Or maybe I misunderstood. But now, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. I leaned back in the seat, staring at the ceiling of the car. Everything inside me felt like it was cracking. Like I was splitting open from the inside out. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew exactly how severe it is. I almost died in 2018. You remember that?" Ethan nodded. Of course he remembered. He'd been the one to carry me out of the restaurant when my throat started closing. He'd ridden in the ambulance with me. He'd held my hand in the ER while doctors pumped meds into my veins to keep me alive. "She came to the hospital that night," I said. "She saw everything. She cried. She swore she'd never let anything like that happen again." I paused. And now she's the one who tried. Ethan's jaw clenched. I think she thought no one would suspect it. An allergic reaction at a wedding. You've always had food issues. It would have looked like a tragic accident. He was right. It would have. No one would have asked questions. I would have gone into shock before dessert even hit the table. And by morning, Samantha would have inherited every penny of what Dad left behind. No suspicion, no police, just grief, and maybe a few kind words about how fragile life can be. The thought made me sick, but more than sick, it made me angry. Not loud, firestorm angry. This was a quiet, cold, earth-shifting kind of anger. The kind that settles deep into your bones. The kind that doesn't fade with sleep. And in that silence, still sitting in the parked car, still trying to wrap my head around it all, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about what almost happened. It was about what needed to happen next. Because when someone tries to erase you from the world, you don't just walk away, you fight back. And I was ready. Ethan reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I didn't want to show you this unless I had to, he said, eyes heavy. I took it from him with trembling hands. It was a printed email from Samantha, addressed to the event coordinator at the hotel. I scanned the lines and then froze. There it was, in plain text, a question about accommodating special food requests, followed by a sentence that made my skin crawl. Please make sure my sister Lauren's dish is prepared separately. She's very sensitive to peanuts, but she tends to be overly cautious. We don't need to make a big deal about it. No mention of a life-threatening allergy. No request for strict precautions. Just a downplayed shrug disguised as care. She knew, I said again, this time louder. She knew exactly what she was doing. Ethan didn't speak, just let me sit in it. And it hit me harder than anything. The truth wasn't just that she wanted the money, it's that she never thought I was worth keeping around. And honestly, maybe I'd seen it coming. I thought back to the months after Dad passed. Samantha went cold, disconnected. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't check in, just focused on her engagement, her big plans, the next thing she could. Post online with a caption like boss babe energy. I remembered a lunch we had last spring, right before the will was finalized. She'd been scrolling through real estate listings on her phone while I tried to talk about splitting up Dad's storage unit. Out of nowhere, she looked up and said, "Do you ever think about doing something big, Laure? Like bigger than nails and foot rubs?" I laughed it off back then, but now it felt like a crack in the mask she wore. Like she'd always seen my life as small, disposable, replaceable. She already had the next step planned, Ethan said quietly. I did a little digging. Her name's on the paperwork for a new podcast studio space downtown. Lease starts in 3 weeks. My head snapped toward him. How do you know that? He shrugged. County records, public information. She didn't even try to hide it. I felt my throat go dry. And she needed money for that? A lot, Ethan replied. I talked to one of her old co-workers. She left her last job 6 months ago. No severance. Her credit cards are nearly maxed out. That's why she was pushing to finalize everything so fast. The wedding, the catering, the PR stunt of it all. It was part of the show. The investment pitch. You were the final puzzle piece. I couldn't breathe. Not from shock anymore, but from rage. Deep, unfamiliar, heavy rage. Samantha didn't just want to move on with her life. She wanted to do it by deleting mine. Quietly, elegantly, wrapped in flowers and champagne flutes and centerpieces that matched her Instagram grid. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. A business decision dressed in white lace. She even hinted about it to Alex, Ethan said. He didn't catch on, but she said something about how she'd have room to breathe after the wedding money comes through. I stared at the dashboard. My name wasn't on her registry. My photo wasn't in her slideshow. She'd barely mentioned me in her vows, and I just kept brushing it off, giving her grace, assuming she was overwhelmed. But maybe she wasn't overwhelmed at all. Maybe she was just calculating. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. So what do we do now? I asked, voice barely there. Ethan reached for his phone. First, I make an anonymous report to the hotel. Let them know there's a credible concern about food tampering. Then, we collect everything: photos, statements, timelines. We go to the police if we have to. I nodded slowly. She's not going to get away with this. Ethan met my gaze. Number, she's not. The car was still. The city outside kept moving, but inside that vehicle, something had shifted. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't the big sister holding things together. I wasn't the quiet one who let things slide. I was a woman who almost died because someone she loved decided she was worth more gone than alive. And I was done pretending we were still family, because family doesn't plan your funeral while asking you to pour their champagne. And I had no intention of going quietly. I didn't cry. Not right away. At first, it was just this hollow numbness, like all the air had been vacuumed out of my chest. I sat there, staring at nothing, feeling nothing, like my body was still catching up to what my brain had just absorbed. Then I saw it on Ethan's phone screen. Security footage from the hotel's side entrance. A blurry clip. Samantha, in her reception dress, talking to the chef, pointing to something on his clipboard. Her lips moving fast. Her face serious. No smile. No warmth. Just cold, focused precision. And that was it. The dam broke. I gasped. This ugly, involuntary sound. And the tears came hard. She was gonna let me die, I whispered. At her wedding, with champagne in my hand. Ethan moved fast, unbuckled his seatbelt, pulled me into his chest like I was breaking. And maybe I was. I trusted her. I kept repeating. My voice cracked and raw. I defended her. I loved her. The ache that came with those words wasn't sharp. It was heavy, dull. Like carrying a backpack full of bricks you didn't realize was even there until someone finally took it off and you collapse. I cried until I couldn't anymore, until my body just gave up on reacting, until I was silent again, just sitting there in the passenger seat, holding Ethan's hand like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. I don't get it, I whispered. I would have given her anything. If she needed help, if she told me she was struggling, I would have written her a check, no questions asked. Ethan nodded. I know, that's what makes this so brutal. And he was right. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease with which she did it, the calculation, the clean execution of a plan she'd clearly rehearsed in her head, like I was just collateral, a temporary obstacle in the way of her next big move. The next morning, I told Mom everything, every single thing, from the footage to the oil to the inheritance clause. She didn't believe me at first. Of course she didn't. Samantha had always been her baby, the golden one, the one who needed extra love. But as Ethan walked her through the emails and the footage and the timeline, I saw her face change. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes widened. And then she broke, full on, soul deep, bone-shaking kind of crying. She held her face in her hands and just collapsed into herself. I did this, she sobbed. I pushed her so hard to be special, to be impressive. I ignored the fact that she never showed up for your father. And when you were holding this family together, I never thanked you once. I reached for her. I didn't know what else to do. It's not your fault, I said. It's hers, her choice, her actions. But she just kept shaking her head. You were always the strong one, she said, the one who handled things. And I just assumed you'd always be okay. That hurt, but it was honest. And for the first time in years, my mom saw me, not just as the older sister, not as the quiet one, but as a woman who had been carrying the weight of everyone else's chaos for far too long. In the days that followed, it all started to unravel. Samantha tried to reach out through her lawyer. No direct call, no apology, just cold, legal language, asking to clarify matters privately. I declined. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Alex showed up at our door 3 days later, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. I didn't know, he said the moment I opened the door. I swear to you, Lauren, I didn't know. His voice cracked. She used me. She used all of us. I believed him. You can tell when someone's shattered, and he was. He told me he'd filed for an annulment, that he didn't want to build anything on top of a lie. And when he left, he thanked me for surviving. That hit me harder than I expected, because it was the first time someone had said it out loud. I survived. Barely. But I did. And now that the cracks were visible, there was no putting anything back the way it was. This wasn't about a single moment of betrayal. It was about the years of imbalance, the emotional blind spots, the way I kept shrinking to make room for someone who never once made space for me. And suddenly, I knew. This wasn't just the collapse of a wedding night. It was the collapse of a fantasy I'd been clinging to for way too long. The hotel launched an internal investigation within 48 hours. Ethan had already made the anonymous report the night we left. But by Monday morning, the security team had pulled the footage. They didn't hesitate. The clip showed exactly what he'd described: Samantha talking to the chef, pointing at the seating chart, then walking away as he pulled a small amber bottle from his apron. When they tested my untouched plate, the lab results confirmed it. Traces of refined peanut oil in the lemon butter sauce. Just enough to trigger a reaction. Just enough to put me in the hospital. Just enough to bury me before dessert. The official statement from the hotel called it a food handling anomaly, under review, but privately, they were spooked. Legal shook. A few staff members were placed on leave. Samantha's catering contract was pulled. Fast. She tried to spin it at first. Told some family members it was a mistake. Said she'd never intentionally do anything to hurt me. But no one was buying it. Not after the texts were found. Yeah, texts. A week after the wedding, Alex gave the police access to their shared iCloud backup. Said he wanted to do the right thing. What they found was worse than I expected. Samantha had messaged the chef directly, instructed him to keep the special seasoning light but noticeable, and added, "My sister's dramatic with allergies. She'll be fine." That text alone was bad enough. But then came the one that gutted me, sent 3 days before the wedding. "If all goes as planned, the full inheritance is mine, and we can finally launch next quarter. She's lived long enough playing saint." She called me a saint like it was a curse word. Like loving my dad, like showing up, like surviving, was some annoying virtue that got in the way of her ambitions. When the detective read that line to me, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, cold, tired, done. The charges were filed shortly after. Attempted murder by means of deliberate food tampering. Her lawyer tried the insanity route, claimed stress, burnout, unprocessed grief. But the evidence was too clear. Too damning. The jury wasn't buying it. Neither was the judge. She was denied bail. The media got wind of it. A local news station ran a headline that made me feel sick. "Bride accused of poisoning sister at dream wedding." Dream wedding. That phrase stuck in my throat because it really had been a dream. Just not mine. Not until I woke up and realized someone I loved had written me out of the ending. I didn't go to the courtroom every day. Couldn't stomach it. But I was there for the sentencing. Alex was too. So was Mom. She sat 2 rows behind me, her hands clenched together, whispering prayers under her breath. And when the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, there was no cheering, no tears, just silence. Heavy and final, like a door had closed that none of us would ever walk through again. That night, I went home and stood in the middle of the kitchen, unsure what to do with myself. Ethan poured me a glass of wine and said, "You don't owe anyone anything right now. Just breathe." So I did. I breathed. I survived. And for the first time in weeks, I finally felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. But what came next wasn't closure. Not yet. Because the hardest part about justice, it doesn't fix the hole someone leaves behind. It just gives you permission to stop pretending it wasn't there. 3 weeks after the trial, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. Standing in the middle of my backyard barefoot, holding a mug of coffee, just watching the wind move through the trees. It wasn't some big symbolic thing. I wasn't trying to have a moment, but there I was, alive, grounded, still standing. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the silence around me didn't feel dangerous. It felt earned. Life didn't go back to normal. How could it? But it found a new rhythm, a quieter one, a better one, in some strange way. My job at the real estate firm picked back up, and I started getting back into the groove of open houses and contract negotiations and staging kitchens with fake fruit. My coworkers were kind. They didn't pry. They just made sure I had coffee waiting in the break room every morning and left little sticky notes on my desk that said things like, "You're killing it," and "Let us know if you need anything." It was simple, but it mattered. Ethan was my anchor through all of it. Every time I had a nightmare, he was there. Every time my chest tightened walking past a bakery or hearing the word wedding, he'd squeeze my hand, just enough to remind me that I wasn't alone. And the people I thought of as background characters in my life, they showed up, big time. Sarah, my best friend from college, flew in from Portland just to sit with me on the couch and eat microwave lasagna while we re-watched old sitcoms in sweatpants. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Cruz, started leaving little care packages at our door. Homemade soup, candles, lemon bars wrapped in foil. These people, they weren't blood, but they felt more like family than anyone I shared DNA with. And that's the part I didn't expect. That losing Samantha, in a way, made room for the people who'd been there all along. Quietly, consistently, with no agenda, just love. One night, over dinner, I told Ethan, I think I finally get it. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when everything falls apart. He smiled. That soft, tired smile he does when he's holding back emotion. "I've been trying to tell you that for 10 years, he said. And he was right. I just hadn't been ready to hear it. Mom took longer. She blamed herself for months, kept apologizing, kept bringing up moments from the past. Like if she could just rewrite the narrative, maybe she could undo what had happened. But one evening, we sat on her porch, watching fireflies flicker between the rose bushes, and she said something I'll never forget. I spent so much time trying to raise two perfect daughters, I didn't realize I had one real one. I didn't know what to say, so I just reached for her hand, and we sat there, fingers intertwined, in a silence that wasn't heavy this time, but healing. I haven't spoken to Samantha, not since the day they took her away. She wrote me a letter. Or well, her lawyer did. Said she was sorry. Said she was not in her right mind. Said she hoped someday I could forgive her. I haven't answered. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Healing doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it just comes with distance and breath and time. But every day that I wake up in my own bed, beside a man who saved my life, every time I open the front door and see the people who chose to stay, I realize something else. I didn't just survive that night. I survived the years leading up to it. The emotional erasure, the gaslighting, the feeling that my needs were always too much, my voice too quiet, my grief too inconvenient. I'm done shrinking. I'm done explaining. I'm done begging someone to love me just because we happen to share a last name. Because love, real love, it doesn't need an invitation. It just walks through the fire and stays. It's been 6 months now. The headlines faded. The court transcripts gathered dust. People moved on, like they always do. Sometimes someone from the extended family will send a text asking how I'm holding up, in that vague, careful tone people use when they don't really want the answer. And I get it. This kind of story doesn't fit inside a polite conversation. There's no easy way to say, my sister tried to kill me at her wedding, and now she's in prison, and I'm still learning how to breathe, without second-guessing my own memory. So I don't say it, I just say, I'm doing better. And that's true. I am. Better doesn't mean healed. It doesn't mean I don't wake up some nights replaying the moment Ethan grabbed my wrist, or wondering what would have happened if I'd taken just one bite. But it does mean I'm no longer haunted by the why. I used to obsess over it. How could she? Why didn't I see it? What did I do wrong? But I've stopped asking those questions. Because sometimes people hurt you not because you failed them, but because they were never wired to value you in the first place. That's a hard truth, but it's also freeing. I've started journaling again. It's not pretty or poetic. It's messy, angry, grateful, real. Pages filled with things I never said out loud. Grief that's not for Samantha, but for the version of her I thought existed, for the sister I imagined I had. And somewhere in all that scribbling, I found a sentence that stuck. You don't have to keep setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I don't even remember where I heard it, but it's been playing in my head like a soundtrack ever since. Last week, I went back to the Riverstone Hotel, not for revenge, not for drama, just to reclaim the space. I walked through the same halls, past the ballroom, into the garden where they took photos, and I stood there, alone. Nothing dramatic happened. No epiphany, no breakdown, just a deep inhale, and the quiet peace of knowing I survived it all. On my terms. I still wear the necklace Dad gave me that final Christmas. A simple gold chain with a small heart. He told me, "You don't need to be loud to be strong, Lore. You already are." I didn't believe him then, but I do now. Strength isn't in shouting. It's in staying, in walking away, in choosing peace over performance. Samantha will be gone for a long time. I don't know what'll happen after. Maybe she'll change. Maybe she won't. But I've made peace with the fact that forgiveness is a gift, not a duty, and I'll give it only if I want to. Not because I'm expected to, not because we share blood, but because I've healed far enough to let go without reopening the wound. So no, I didn't lose a sister. I lost an illusion. What I gained? A life that's finally mine. A husband who would drag me out of a ballroom to save me. A mother who sees me now. A tribe of chosen family who show up without needing a reason. And maybe that's the real story. Not the betrayal, not the poison, not the courtroom drama, but the quiet, beautiful truth that even after someone tries to erase you, you still get to decide how the story ends. And this time, I'm the one holding the pen.